Welcome to the whole interview with Ken Lee about the Nissan Patrol. Ken was very nice to give up his valuable time to talk to us about this. And one thing I was surprised about was Ken is actually a fan of the channel. He's watched a few of the videos, and that's actually how I originally got in touch with him. I think he left a message or something like that, and then I managed to track him down through LinkedIn and then badgered him to see if I could do an interview with him for a car that he'd styled, and so he agreed. We both agreed that the Nissan Patrol was a good one to do. So anyway, without further ado, here is the full interview.
It's actually, I worked on the latest Patrol that was launched in, what is it now? So the end of 2024. But also, the one before, we did a major refresh in 2019. So that was my first experience with working on the Nissan Patrol. And obviously, there are many, many important generations before it, but it all builds up to what it is today. But I think one interesting thing is that the Patrol is such a strong nameplate in the Nissan brand. It's almost up there with the Z and the GTR. Even though people love enthusiasts generally talk about sports cars, but the Patrol is our other big icon. So it's a tremendous sense of responsibility to work on the newer generation. So as you probably hear, any type of iconic enthusiast vehicle, whenever you do a new one, the customers, the loyal customers will say, "Don't change anything. We like it just the way it is." And literally, I've heard that, a few times when we interview customers and when we talk to people in our key markets, and they are very satisfied with the Patrol that they currently have or they had at the time of the when we interviewed them. And so that's actually a great challenge for us because I'm thinking, well, you say that you love it and you don't want us to change it, but the competitive landscape changes, every year. And we have to advance, we have to change it. And hence this is the biggest source of our headache, but also the challenge that we enjoy so much as designers.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's always that challenge to try and get new customers because obviously the existing customers are very satisfied with things. So it's trying to find the new ones who are looking maybe for something different. But when you began work on the latest Patrol, what did you feel had to remain to keep it a Patrol?
Yeah, so the fundamental thing that must remain, oh, I guess there are many actually, but it's built up its reputation as something, as a really dependable, reliable, durable vehicle. I think that's the first and foremost, and why it has such a strong following in many of our markets, particularly the Middle East and Australia and in many parts of the world. And so we have to, continue that sort of trust with the customer that we cannot let them down. It has to be first and foremost, a rugged, tough, go anywhere vehicle. And that's been the case for every generation since 1951. So with every new generation, as it moved into the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and then into the later part of the 90s and to the 2000s, it became quite interesting because we find that the Patrol has almost in parallel developed together with the Middle East region, which it is, a big part of our sales and loyal customers are there. So as the region advances and, the architecture, the, highway networks, as everything is growing massively in that time frame, the expectations of the customers are changing. And so we begin with a little bit with the Y61 series, which is the version that came out in the late 90s. So that is still a boxy, rugged, first and foremost, an off-road oriented vehicle, but a hint of premiumness and luxury has started to creep in. You get nicer materials in the interior, more modern electronics, and things that the customer is starting to expect and demand. And so that was kind of the start of the evolution, of the modern day Patrol. And then the big leap came in the early 2010. So that's when the Y62 version came out. And that one, I believe at the time, Nissan actually took a big risk to really bring the Patrol upmarket and more premium, but of course, retaining the fundamentals of what makes it tough and go anywhere. And so it got a bit more upscale, refined, and it's almost to many of our customers, it feels like a luxury vehicle. But at the same time, the design is not a it's not a design that screams, "Look at me, I've made it." It's a very honest design that is still quite simple, but with just enough refinement and maybe a touch of elegance and something to make it aspirational. And what's interesting is that generation of Patrol, it was developed in tandem with the Infinity sibling, the QX80, which was bound for North America. And so while being developed together, the the aspirations of the premium brand and some of that type of form language and design cues have started to creep into the Patrol itself. So, I mean, there's kind of this influence to bring it up market naturally.
Yeah, and so obviously you worked on a little bit on the 2010 model and also the 2024 model. And so how do you balance with both of those cars? How do you balance the off-road heritage of the Patrol with this customer's desire for luxury and thinking that, well, this thing's never actually going to go off-road. It's actually only going to, take people to the shopping mall and back. And also, so which means you've got to have that on-road comfort and desirability. You've got these two really competing things. How do you solve that?
That aspect is so interesting. So when I visited the UAE and visit places like the Dubai Mall or see these opulent five-star hotels, it's interesting to see that in the valet parking area, you would see Lamborghini, Bentley, and then Patrol. And to see them all together, quite inspiring to me because then you talk to the customers and there's a wide range of customers, and some who are, multi-millionaires and they feel extremely proud and comfortable to drive a Patrol because it is an honest vehicle and it's a very socially accepted vehicle in the region, no matter what level of society you're in. Um, so in that sense, I got kind of a taste of, what the vehicle means to the customer. And then, okay, they go to the five-star hotel and, one day and the next day they go jumping sand dunes out in the desert. So with the 2010, with the Y62 version, it started having aspirations of a city vehicle, and it eventually, as it evolved, it started to have multiple versions with different front bumpers. And there's a city version, and then there's an off-road version. Now the off-road gives it an additional amount of approach angle, and it's even further more capable off-road. And the city version is also, of course, it has to remain capable as well, so it doesn't lose that aspect. So fundamentally, powertrain, chassis, those as a basement level, it's off-road capable. That's a given. And what brings it the premium touch is, well, design is one of the very, very key aspects. And even the way we shape the body and the level of detailing in all the areas. So, maybe using the version I have worked on, which is the major refresh that came out at the end of 2019. So it's still a Y62, but we have completely changed the front and the rear of the vehicle. And what we look at, the overall silhouette, the strength of it has to communicate the capability. So it's still boxy, and people say Patrol is boxy, it's tough. But at the same time, actually, when you dive deeper into the design and look carefully, there is actually not a single flat surface on it. The body shapes are made of positive volumes, and they're strong, powerful, but also quite nuanced. So there's a strong sensitivity into shaping all of the body panels to catch light in just the right way. So the panels themselves look strong, but also expensive. And in a way, that is true in both the Y62 and the latest Y63 version, where our design team and myself, we visit the region, in the Middle East, and we take inspiration from what we see there, including the architecture. And when you see, both the traditional architecture and the modern ones, there's a sense of boldness. The proportions are generous and strong. They're not delicate. You get a sense of grandness in most of the architecture that is done there, and the volumes and forms are always using very bold, positive volumes. And so, for example, seeing the Grand Mosque in Abu Dhabi, the pillars and the elements on the building are very bold and powerful. And we see those as inspiration and the sense of aesthetic of the customers in the region. And so, as an example, so I'm maybe mixing different models together, but as we worked on the latest version, the Y63, in the front grille, how we evolve it from the past. We have always had this traditional Nissan, what we call V motion grille. So it's not just a box; it's the shape of a V to give it some dynamism. And when we come to the latest version, we've done enough chrome V motion grills, throughout the generations. It's been very consistent. So where do we go from there? Do we just make it bigger and bigger? It can only be so big until people start to get sick of it. So with the latest version, we took the architectural inspiration, and instead of chrome, we made the V-shaped pillars on the grill. They're body color, they're positive shape, like the columns and pillars of architecture. So they give a sense of strength, and I mean, it is styling, but at the same time, at a glance, it gives the impression of the vehicle. It communicates that it's strong underneath. And I think that's one of the ways, we evolve the vehicle. And we've always been saying that, lighting is the new chrome. So, in the past, to convey luxury, you add more and more chrome to it. And actually, in the latest version, we dial back the chrome. But we focus on lighting, which is, gives a sense of premiumness through the use of technology. So a lot of effort has been put into the LED signature lighting with a very unique, iconic shape. And which brings us to actually another aspect that the customers really pay attention to, because, as I was using architecture as a reference, in the zoom out sense, the proportions and volumes are bold. But when you zoom in, there is a certain exquisiteness to the detailing, which is loved by our customers in the Middle East, and of course, actually all over the world. That who doesn't love refined detailing that looks expensive? So the same principles apply to when we design the patrol. Is that when we start to zoom in, um, the lighting elements, and even the details within the grille, the side vents, the tail lamps, headlamps, everything has a sense of consistency. So in the latest one, we evolved the lighting signature. From the last several generations, we've had the C-shaped signatures in the lighting. So customers already recognize it. And we thought, since they recognize it and they call it the C-shaped signature, okay, let's make it double and give them two C shapes. It looks quite impressive. You have, when the turn signals come on, you have two C-shaped elements lighting up, very recognizable. There's no other vehicle like it. And then that is echoed through as you go across the vehicle. On the side vent has the exact same aspect ratio of two C shapes. Even the gap in between is consistent, and it comes across all the way to the tail lamp. And that's something that when we interview the customers, they tell us they really pay attention to, is the sense of consistency throughout the vehicle. And there's attention to detail. It shows there are human designers, not AI, is working on it with a fine eye and a relentless strive to make it perfect. And I would say that sentiment kind of echoes throughout the product development team, not only the designers, but obviously with the engineers, throughout the generations of patrols and Nissan in general, the that Japanese sense of craftsmanship and never give up until it's perfect. And and I feel it when I work with our engineering team, our product planners, is that, we listen to the customers, how they use the vehicle, and there is a strong desire to simply perfect it. So that inspires us as well, for design, that every detail, so we spend lots of time, and when we feel, when we feel tired, we are reminded, hey, these customers are waiting for our new the new version of the Patrol. They spend their hard-earned money on it, and they are proud owners, and so we cannot let them down. And so there's definitely a very much a human aspect to our work.
Very good. Very good. Yeah. So what was the hardest part to get right on the new car?
Okay, there are many, many challenges. So I think the balancing the rugged nature of the vehicle, but giving it just enough refinement and premium touch and just enough newness to take it into the next generation. I would say that's a big challenge. And I think one design phrase that always inspires me is from the famous designer Raymond Loewy from the 30s, and the term was Maya, Maya, which is most advanced yet acceptable. So that's something we try to keep in mind when we design for a vehicle with such a strong heritage and a loyal customer base, because it's not something we want to mess up, for once, but then we don't want to be conservative and be afraid to bring it into the future. So I think to strike that balance, and so we will not do something to be new just to be new or to be different for different sake. So, and I think that's the greatest challenge, because in the strive for any designer to come up with something new and never been done before, oftentimes there's a reason why it's never been done before, because it doesn't look attractive, or fundamentally not attractive to the human eye. So I think that's the greatest challenge, is coming up with something that gives just enough freshness for customers to want to jump onto the new version, but don't lose them and alienate them. So I think in case of the latest Patrol, keeping the strong proportions, a good stance, that's fundamental. When you have good stance, good volumes, you capture already 80% of the design. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the detailing, the technology, and how we bring this all together. And and also one interesting aspect that's maybe quite unique to Patrol is the majority of our sales, because it's sold in regions with hot climates, and they're usually white. So in a white vehicle, the graphics is everything. The position of the lamps, the grille, you see the negative to positive space. That's the first thing you see. Then as a secondary, you see the surfacing and the language of the shapes themselves. So which means, the aspect of how the front face appears is so important. And we always talk about we need to create a face that looks healthy, and it looks strong, and it looks confident. The headlamps are the eyes. It represents a certain gesture, or a certain feeling. So that's something that we do tons of sketches. We would move things millimeters just to get it right. And another important aspect, the DLO, the daylight opening, the side window graphic, because when you glance at the side view, other than, the very strong stance, it being boxy, what else do we recognize from a mile away? It would be, the window graphic, and something we want to hold on to from the heritage of Nissans is the D pillar, which kicks up and has a diagonal gesture. And that's something that's been around in Nissan heritage for a while, as far back as I can remember. In the 70s, the Ken Mary Skyline had it, and there were some others, the S10 Sylvia. And then moving into modern times, every generation of the Nissan Murano had it, and a few others. And in the boxy vehicle like a patrol, if all the graphics and lines are perpendicular and linear, it would be a bit static and boring, and ultimately it is still a dynamic, a moving vehicle. So we want to give it just enough hint of motion. So things like this, where a big gesture of the window graphics or the V motion in the front grille, some of these areas are what we do to give it, some uniqueness and some dynamism in a boxy vehicle.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, you've done a fantastic job and it's worked really well. So let's talk a little bit more about the heritage of the Patrol. So, which previous version would you say is your personal favorite? And obviously you've talked about the elements you drew on it from the original one, but so which one was potentially your most favorite, and which elements did you want to take from those things to put in the new car?
Yeah, so I have a couple of sketches that shows the different generations of the it's a collage of all the generations together. Now, so which one is my favorite generation of Patrol? That's a really tough question because there's some aspect I love about each one of them. And maybe I'll just point out something that's unique and inspiring to us, in each generation. But one of them, and I'm gonna look at some of the images that I've collected. Starting in the 80s, with the Y60 and even before that in the 160 generations, those were very utilitarian designs. They were pure boxes. So none of this dynamic movement or refined details have come on board yet. But in that generation, the decals and the unique paint schemes were quite wild. At the time, you have a red body color with yellow stripes on the body side. So that was quite common back in the 80s. To have the paint graphics, not only on patrol but on a lot of the off-road vehicles. So that was certainly a trend back then. So even at that time, when people buy these vehicles, you can feel that there is a longing for a sense of style. It's just how people express it has evolved over the decades. So I think that kind of bold graphic treatment is super inspiring because as a kid, as a young child in the 80s, what I always remember and felt about Japanese cars is always the graphics. Whether it is the paint stripes or decals. And even the lighting, where the sense of graphical detail and innovative treatment is very strong in all the Japanese cars of the 80s. And that was the era where Japanese cars meant the top notch of technology. And you definitely find that the graphics are crisp, they're refined, and they're somehow tied into technology like lighting, and then the decals would describe the vehicle, would mention what type of engine it has, that type of thing. So I think it resonates with me personally, seeing all the crazy decals of the 80s. So I think in those generations, that's what jumped out to me.
Mm.
And then,
Yeah, it was a
and
wild
then,
time. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I'm sure you have your favorites as well.
Of course, of course. Yeah. And it was a very interesting way of trying to differentiate. But I think you're right. It's an interesting point that we were trying to, well, yeah. Even though I'm not that old, at least to be in doing it. But certainly you're right. You're trying to create that sort of sense of style. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, here's an interesting one. So if you could show one feature of the new Patrol to the people who designed the original Patrol that would blow their mind, what would it be?
Wow, that's also another good one. I've never been asked that question before. Okay, if we could show the creators of the original Patrol something from the new Patrol. Okay, now I think I would have to say maybe it's a little bit cheating because it's not say it's not a stylistic element. It's more of okay, there's a little Easter egg in the interior. So on the center console, there's a small tag that says since 1951. And there is actually a reason we put it in there. So to that whole fanaticism about quality and craftsmanship. So when we're designing this interior, which is itself on the new Patrol quite luxurious and premium, and there's a place on the vertical portion of the center console and the horizontal portion where they join together. There's tiny little seam. And in the design team strive for perfection, we thought we cannot just have a seam in an arbitrary place. So that's when the idea from one of the team members thought, let's put a little tag there. And then we start brainstorming, what do we say on the tag? And that was the time, when we start brainstorming Easter egg ideas, what could we put, in all throughout the vehicle for customers to discover. So then we thought since 1951, clearly that's we pay the homage to the original Patrol.
That's a great answer. I love that. It's better than my idea, which was Apple CarPlay, which is
Oh, you
kind
would
of
really blow their mind.
that would really, yeah, that would really confuse them. Yeah. So why do you think the Patrol name has endured for so long?
Yeah, I think simply, the vehicle has not let the customer down. It's, brought them to different places. It's always been with generations of customers who have throughout, generations of their families been buying patrols. And so it's built up a following. But at the same time, as word of mouth spreads, we get new customers, we get younger customers, and it's always been the cool product. In the sports car side, we have the Z and the GTR, and then on the off-road side, we have the Patrol. And I think simply it's endured, throughout all these years. Yeah, but of course, it puts a heavy challenge on us, in the product development team to keep innovating, to keep, because competitors are coming, new challengers are always coming, and segment will evolve, and how we bring new technology and how, in the new Patrol, the interior takes such a big step in advancement. As you mentioned before, if we show the amount of technology in the new Patrol to the creators of the original one, yes, that would blow their mind. And you would not expect something that is so rugged and can get dirty, but at the same time, you get inside and it's this comfortable cocoon that has all this tech and these big screens and it's just amazing how far we've gone.
Yeah, I think you're right. So one thing I was pleased to see, I was looking at some of the news reports, and you and your team must be quite proud that the Patrol is returning to Japanese showrooms in 2027. How do you and your team feel about that?
Yeah, that's it goes to show how aspirational as a nameplate and as a product, it just resonates with people all around the world. So yeah, we do look forward to a day, when the Patrol comes home to its home market again. That's definitely something we will uh, look forward to when that day comes. And even recently, we did a launch of the new Patrol in the Philippines. And that's another market where, we don't think so much, connect the Patrol with that market. But, it appeals to different markets in different ways. So over there, people see it as this flagship, this luxurious vehicle to be chauffeur driven, and could definitely park in front of a valet parking in a five-star hotel. That aspect where but anyhow, as time progresses, as I meet people around the world, it never, yeah, cease to amaze me how much people love that product. So, which again puts additional pressure on the team, as we keep developing. And now, obviously, we're working on another generation, in the studio, which I can obviously not talk about. But then again, how do we make it new and fresh, but don't lose our loyal, customer base?
Yeah, it must be very difficult as a stylist to come in and you've got all this history and all the pressure of that. And in some respects you go, oh my God, I'm not worthy. I can't do this. But You've got to. I mean, you've got to stamp your mark, and you've got to do stuff, and you've got to get over that, and you've just got to, right, we're going to make something that's just better and more amazing than before. We're going to build on the shoulders of giants, I suppose. And you've certainly done that. You've done a great job. It's a fantastic new
Well,
car.
thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So obviously you can't talk about where you're going with the new stylistic direction, but could you maybe talk a little bit about the future of the Nissan Patrol and maybe where you think maybe the market's going, or how the Patrol might fit in with that?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, yeah, obviously I cannot show sketches and things like that, but I think to talk a little bit about, where a Nissan brand in general, where we want to be headed. But as all the different segments are getting more and more crowded, there are more competitors and challengers. Uh, um, in a way, there's something that Nissan has very strongly that maybe newer competitors don't have. And of course, it's the heritage, it's the history, and we've got some great nameplates. So that's something we are going to continue to play off of, to not forget the heritage and look back at what people love about the vehicles and of course play that up. So in case of the Patrol, yeah, how do we make the design communicate more of that toughness and go anywhere, but retaining the aspirational and premium aspects of it? So we simply need to do more of the same. But then at the same time, as the market evolves and as more and more technology comes into the vehicle, then the debate of how much digital, how much analog, that's an ongoing topic that we discuss deeply, and I think every type of new technology that we add has to give some kind of value to the customer that they could appreciate. So we are not going to do technology for technology's sake or just to join the trends. Um, but I think ultimately, as designers, I think, or specifically as Nissan designers, taking the heritage from the past, bringing it into the future. So what we need to do the most is give the vehicles character. And in some brands, there's a certain very fixed design language, and you do a small version of that, a medium version, a bigger version. But Nissan is a very appealing company for car designers because we don't do that. We have so many high character and iconic nameplates, and we definitely have fun with each one of them. And so then the common thread between them is the fact that they all have high character. And of course we have some visual cues as the V-motion grille that I mentioned, the headlamp signature, some visual cues will inevitably tie the different vehicles together. But we don't subscribe to the Russian doll mentality where we make big, medium, and small. So that frees us up to really give some kind of unique character for each segment. For each customer is different. So in each market, we need to find a way. If competitors are going one direction, then we find, okay, where have we not gone yet? So even another vehicle, in a very different vehicle segment that we just showed to the public, the Nissan Juke. There's a EV Juke coming, so that was also a project I was responsible for, and we definitely took some, um, very unique directions in the design language of that one.
Very good, fantastic. Well, thank you, Ken. Thank you for giving me your valuable time and sharing with all of us your insight into the patrol. This has been fascinating. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.